Please be seated.
Bien, nous allons...
We shall resume the hearing. I had forgotten to mention this since other judges are sitting in other hearings. We shall resume in this courtroom tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and on Wednesday we shall be sitting in the afternoon. So tomorrow morning we start at 9 o'clock, and we had advised all and everyone about this.
Thank you, Your Honors. Your Honors, the evidence I discussed before the break proved that the JCE members prepared and deployed Serb forces, including Šešelj, in a persecutorial campaign in Croatia as of August 1991. While this persecutorial campaign in Croatia was at its highest, Bosnia and Herzegovina was set on a path to independence. The accused worked with Bosnian Serb leaders, including JCE member Karadzic, to prepare Serb military and political structures to prevent independence. The accused himself sent Šešelj units to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and SIS branches were set up throughout Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is set forth in paragraphs 201 to 207 of the prosecution's closing brief. On the 15th of October 1991, the ethnically mixed Assembly of the Socialist Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina debated whether to declare independence. During the debate, Radovan Karadzic warned that if the Muslims and Croats were to pursue independence, it would be the same highway of hell as in Croatia. As we will now see, he threatened that the highway would lead as far as to the extension of the Muslims in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Please understand. Take it seriously. It is not good what you're doing. This is not the road that you want Bosnia and Herzegovina to take. The same highway of hell and suffering that Slovenia and Croatia went through. Don't think you won't take Bosnia and Herzegovina to hell and Muslim people into possible extinction, because Muslim people will not be able to defend itself if it comes to war here.
This is a clip from Exhibit P1004, and the part that was played is found, if you honors want to look at the text, at page 3 of the transcript of that video, which is in evidence. 9 days later, the Assembly of Bosnia and Herzegovina nevertheless voted in favor of independence. In response, as they had done it in Croatia, the JCE members formed parallel Serb institutions and prepared for war. The accused and other Serb leaders used their experience from Croatia to prepare for war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As in Croatia, the Bosnian Serb leadership established political and administrative structures. They also created police and territorial defense forces. As in Croatia, the accused sent Šešelj to assist. As in Croatia, Milosevic provided significant support through the JNA and the Serbian MUP. Immediately after the Bosnian Assembly voted for independence, Bosnian Serb leaders, including Karadzic, Krajisnik, and Plavšić, proclaimed a separate Serb assembly, Exhibit P931 and AF1 number 63. Soon thereafter, Karadzic ordered Serb leaders in Bosnia and Krajina to establish control in the area, form military units, and subordinate those units to the JNA. The order was fully accepted by local Serb leaders. This is found in the Chamber's adjudicated fact decision from the 23rd of July 2010, facts numbers 30 and 31. In the variant A and B instructions from the 19th of December 1991, the SDS leadership in Bosnia and Herzegovina established Serb-only institutions like crisis staffs, municipal assemblies, TO, and police forces. Once formed, the crisis staff were intended to take control of the municipalities. This is in AF1 number 100 and exhibits P871 and P957. In this way, Karadzic, through the crisis staffs, exercised control over civilian administrative authorities as well as the Serb military forces in the area, including Serb TOs and police forces. As the Bosnian Serb leadership formalized its plan to take control of targeted areas in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the accused cooperated with his JCE partners. Together, they supported the Bosnian Serb forces and implemented their common purpose in Bosnia and Herzegovina, just as they had done in Croatia. The accused had already in May 1991 established an SIS organization in Romania and organized a Chetnik command. This is shown in exhibits P1162 and 1177. Voivodas Kravilovic and Alexic then organized the SIS in the Romagna region in cooperation with SIS headquarters in Belgrade. The accused also met his Chetnik commanders in eastern Herzegovina and in Bosnia and Krajina in May 1991, as he stated himself in exhibit P163. The accused deployed thousands of Šešeljevci to Bosnia and Herzegovina, as he said in exhibits P344 and P347. Many were redeployed fighters from Croatia. As in Croatia, other Serb leaders looked to the accused to support their forces. The accused deployed his Šešeljevci at the request of JCE members. For example, the accused deployed Šešeljevci to Bosnia and Herzegovina at the request of JCE member Slobodan Milosevic, exhibit P90, page 6, and JCE member Plavšić sent requests for assistance to the accused and other paramilitary leaders, including Arkan. That is in exhibit P987. As in Croatia, the accused sent his Šešeljevci to crime-based areas and to pattern municipalities in Bosnia and Herzegovina at the request of local Serb leaders. For example, the Serb authorities in Zvornik sent the SIS a request for Šešeljevci. In response, the accused sent witness Rankic and other SIS officials to negotiate with the local authorities, and then personally decided to deploy Šešelj to fight as part of the Zvornik TO. This evidence is in Rankit's statement, which is in evidence as Exhibit P1074 at paragraph 41. Eastern Herzegovina SDS leader Božidar Vučurović made a dramatic appeal for Šešelj to be deployed to his region. The accused then gave a press conference in Trebinje, announcing that he would send volunteers. He subsequently deployed large numbers of Šešelj to the region. This can be seen in exhibits P55 and P1109. And Stevan Todorovic, the chief of police in Bosanski Šamac, requested Šešelj from the SIS war staff. In response, the SIS war staff redeployed Šešelj under Voivoda Sretko Radovanovic, also known as Debeli, from Western Slavonia to Bosanski Šamac, and placed them under the command of the Bosanski Šamac TO. Ljubiša Petković, the chief of the accused war staff, discussed this deployment in Exhibit C18 at paragraph 49. As in Croatia, the accused remained actively involved with his Šešelj. He and members of his war staff cooperated with other JCE members to ensure that his Šešelj were armed, trained, and equipped. By February 1992, the accused and his Šešelj were ready for war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. After asserting that the Serbian people would never allow Bosnia and Herzegovina to be independent or a sovereign state, he announced, quote, "We are ready for war. Our Serbian Radical Party and the Chetnik movement act in all areas of Bosnia and Herzegovina." This is in Exhibit P1192, pages 1 and 2. As they had done in Croatia, Milosevic and the JNA leadership also gave support to the Bosnian Serb leadership. They redeployed significant forces and equipment from Croatia to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Expert Toynens explained at transcript pages 4024 to 4026 how this worked. For instance, the JNA redeployed an armored brigade to the area of Zvornik, which later participated in the attack on Zvornik. Also, on the 5th of December 1991, Milosevic and Kadevic agreed to reorganize the JNA so that when the JNA would be forced to leave Bosnia and Herzegovina, it could leave behind men and equipment under Karadic's authority. This plan was implemented in May 1992 when the VIS was created. I refer your honors to Exhibit P198, page 10, and AF1, facts numbers 186, 190, and 191. Milosevic also provided assistance to the Bosnian Serb leadership through the Serbian MUP. The Serbian MUP trained and supplied both Šešelj and local Serbs. Hundreds of Šešelj were trained at MUP centers pursuant to an agreement between the accused, himself, and the MUP. Witness Petković explains this in, for example, Exhibit C16, paragraph 1948. And the Serbian MUP's Red Berets, whose training camps we've already mentioned, deployed their special police force to Bosnia. And it fought, for example, in Bosanski Šamac and Nevesinje. This can be seen in Exhibit P131 at page 6. As my colleagues will be discussing, the JNA, the Serbian MUP, and the SDS arranged considerable arming of civilians and so-called volunteers. At this juncture, I will just mention Exhibit P257, page 6. It is a JNA report from March 1992, and it shows the presence of almost 70,000, quote, volunteers in the 2nd Military District who had been armed by the JNA or by the SDS. By the end of March 1992, the JCE members were ready for war. Krajisnik told the Serbian Assembly in Bosnia and Herzegovina, quote, "It would be good if we could start implementing what we have agreed upon, the ethnic division on the ground." That is from Exhibit P951, page 12. And on the 24th of March 1992, Krajisnik told the Serb Assembly that at the appropriate time, quote, "all the Serbian municipalities, both the old ones and the newly established ones, would literally assume control of the entire territory of the municipality concerned." That is from Exhibit P952, page 22. Soon afterwards, Serb forces began to carve out Serb-claimed areas from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Serb forces composed of the JNA and later the VIS, local Serbian TO and police units, Serbian MUP units, Arkan's men, and Šešelj carried out a massive persecutorial campaign against the non-Serb civilian population in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As in Croatia, the results of this persecutorial campaign were devastating. Your Honours now have on your monitors Exhibit P669. This map shows the demographic composition of Bosnia and Herzegovina right before the war in 1991. The red and light red areas were areas with significant Serb population. Green areas were majority Muslim areas, blue areas were majority Croat, and purple and grey areas are mixed populations. As your Honours can see, it is a fairly complex patchwork. We will now look at how the situation looked after the persecutorial campaign. Now on your monitors, you have Exhibit P629. It shows the ethnic composition in 1997. The colors are still the same. Red areas are Serb areas, green areas are Muslim areas, and blue areas are Croat areas. And as can be seen, the geographic composition of Bosnia and Herzegovina had been completely changed. The crimes in Zvornik, Greater Sarajevo, Mostar, and Nevesinje that have been proven in this case were beyond a reasonable doubt part of this campaign. In conclusion, Your Honours, The evidence proves that the accused cooperated closely with other JCE members to pursue their common goal of a Serb state. They set up Serb-only institutions. They established police and military forces. When first Croatia and later Bosnia and Herzegovina declared independence, they deployed these forces in areas that they claimed as Serb land. At least from August 1991, these forces waged a massive persecutorial campaign against non-Serbs in the targeted areas. The crimes in Vukovar, Zvornik, Greater Sarajevo, Mostar, and Nevesinje were part of this persecutorial campaign. The crimes were committed by the accused Šešelj and other Serb forces commanded or controlled by other JCE members. The accused himself described the result of this campaign and his cooperation with Milosevic. He said, quote, "The result of our cooperation and joint efforts was the creation of Republika Srpska and the Republic of Serbian Krajina. Without our support and that of the Socialist Party of Serbia, I do not believe that the Serbs of Republika Srpska and the Republic of the Serbian Krajina would have succeeded in their struggle to attain their own countries." End quote. That is from Exhibit P 1249 at page 2. Your Honours, the evidence proves beyond a reasonable doubt that there existed a common purpose of which the accused was a part, to commit the crimes charged in the indictment. Thank you, Your Honours. Before handing over to Ms. Beersay, I will address some evidentiary issues. As Your Honours have seen, the accused made numerous admissions before the indictment period that have proved his membership in and contribution to the JCE. The accused has subsequently denied some of these prior admissions. The sworn and unsworn statements made by the accused after his indictment requires careful scrutiny. The accused's self-serving denials should be rejected when they are without corroboration of other significant, independent and credible evidence, because he has a motive to shape his statements to evade criminal responsibility. Other witnesses, either closely connected to the accused or listed in his defense final trial brief as defense witnesses, have recanted their prior statements which inculpate the accused or simply have not appeared to testify. The statements of these witnesses were admitted into evidence and are reliable. The reliability of these statements is verified by admitted suspect interviews, as well as by the testimony of a member of the Office of the Prosecutor, the OTP, and by other reliable corroborative evidence. Some of the recanting witnesses made outlandish allegations against OTP staff during their testimony in an effort to discredit their prior written statements to the OTP. The accused has repeated these claims in his final trial brief. However, an independent court-appointed inquiry conducted a comprehensive review of these allegations. The allegations were rejected. The trial chamber accepted the conclusions of the inquiry. These recantations are not worthy of credit. The recantations were the product of an organized campaign to deter witnesses from testifying truthfully. The trial chamber should reject all the accused's arguments that he relied on witness incredible recantations or challenges. I'm sorry, Your Honors, I will start that over again. The trial chamber should reject all of the accused's arguments that rely on witnesses' incredible recantations or that challenges the admitted statements of non-appearing witnesses. I refer Your Honors to the argumentative appendix to the prosecution's closing brief, which addresses these issues in greater detail. That, Your Honors, conclude my submissions for now. Ms. Biersay will present the prosecution's arguments regarding the accused's contribution to the common purpose that I have just discussed. And we will have to rearrange the prosecution here for a little bit.
Bien, bonjour Madame Berset. Vous avez donc.
Good evening, Ms. Biesny. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before I begin my presentation, I wanted to just verify the timing of the next break so I could be consistent with the court schedule. By my calculation, if we do the hour and a half, it would be 6:40. So I'm not sure if you'd want to take a break at 6:40 or not.
Oui. Je préfère.
I'd rather we went non-stop until the end. But if Mr. Šešelj is tired, he'll tell us so.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Your Honors. Your Honors, the accused poisoned and pounded non-Serbs and Serbs with his campaign of hatred throughout the former Yugoslavia. He did so as a deputy of the National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia. He did so as the leader of the Serbian Radical Party, the second most popular party in Serbia. He did so as the quasi-military leader known throughout the former Yugoslavia by his military Chetnik title, Vojvoda. And he did so as a charismatic media star who advocated the forcible creation of Greater Serbia. The power and authority implicit in his political and military trappings made it crystal clear to non-Serbs as well as to Serbs that the words he wielded as weapons should be taken seriously. Serbs and non-Serbs saw for themselves that the accused could and did make his threats of violence real. He did it through sympathizers, and he did it through his Šešeljevci. In his brief and throughout this trial, the accused has tried to persuade the chamber that during the indictment period, he was a simple opposition politician and that he is now being prosecuted merely for his political ideology. As a matter of fact, as a matter of law, his being a politician does not absolve him of his responsibility for committing, aiding and abetting, and instigating the charged crimes. And this is discussed in detail in the prosecution's closing brief, at paragraphs 96 to 107, paragraphs 247 to 274, and paragraphs 566 to 609. Your Honors, in this segment of the presentation, I will highlight some key points relating to three general areas. 1, the accused's influence and authority during the indictment period. 2, his contribution to the common purpose and to the charged crimes through his hate propaganda against non-Serbs. And 3, his contribution to the common purpose and to the charged crimes through his recruitment and deployment of volunteers. The accused significantly contributed to the implementation of the common criminal purpose, and he substantially contributed to the commission of crimes. And he did so through his two contributions, the hate propaganda and his campaign to recruit, deploy, and encourage volunteers. His contribution to these crimes also shows his intent to commit them. For his hate speeches in Vukovar and Hrkavci, he is guilty of physically committing persecution and other crimes. Throughout the indictment period, this accused held political, quasi-military, and popular influence and authority. He exploited that influence and authority, first, to aggravate inter-ethnic tensions and brutally attack non-Serbs in order to drive them out of targeted areas, and to recruit, deploy, and encourage those willing to forcibly and criminally further his goal of creating Greater Serbia. The accused seized the disintegration of Yugoslavia to inspire fear and incite discriminatory crimes. And that's why JCE members requested and encouraged his contributions. Reliable and credible evidence proves beyond a reasonable doubt in this case that the accused fully intended the resulting criminal campaign of persecution in Croatia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Hrkavci in Serbia. Was the accused a politician during the indictment period? Absolutely. And a very successful one. During the conflict in Croatia and BiH, the accused, leader of the SRS, and a National Assembly deputy, was the charismatic public face of an ultra-nationalist policy that promoted a homogeneous Greater Serbia. Its western borders, as you have heard, ran along the infamous KOKV line, Karlobag, Ogulin, Karlovac, Virovitica line. Exhibits P156, P157, P158, and the tables 5, 6, and 8 in those exhibits, and those are the election results from May and December of 1992. According to those exhibits, the SRS was the second most popular party after the SPS. This was true for both the Federal Assembly and the National Assembly of Serbia. Now, in 1993, the accused admitted that during the indictment period, the public perception was that the accused and the SRS held extensive political influence, partly because of their cooperation with Milosevic and the SPS. And that cooperation was in assisting Serbs outside of Serbia. As the accused himself put it, quote, "Many people had the impression that we radicals were in coalition with socialists," end quote. And he admitted this in his own periodical, Zabatna Serbia, which is admitted as Exhibit P1230. In August 1993, the accused conceded in Exhibit P1224 that he contributed to the power of Milosevic because Milosevic had, quote, "the backing of the second most powerful party, the Serbian Radical Party," end quote. The accused went on to describe his significant political influence, saying, quote, "I do not have any state functions, but I have a greater authority than some ministers. And you can object all you want, but authority is authority and cannot be measured through titles, but through realistic political strength," end quote. The evidence has shown how the accused abused his political strength. The core purpose of the SRS was not merely to engage in politics, but to forcibly impose a Serb-dominated state cleansed of non-Serbs. In Exhibit P1183, the accused participated in a televised interview during the height of war in Croatia in November 1991. He distinguished the SRS from other political parties because of its contributions to the war. The SRS, in his words, quote, "was not a party which holds more press conferences rather than firing bullets on the front," end quote. Your Honors, this accused was more than a simple politician. He was a politician who held the highest Chetnik military title, Voivoda. This deferential title was recognized by many, including volunteers. He headed the Serbian Chetnik movement, an unregistered movement grafted onto the registered SRS to become its Chetnik military wing. And as has been shown, he wore military garb and was often escorted by armed, uniformed men. The accused has cultivated this belligerent, militaristic, personal, and organizational identity. And he did that even before becoming a deputy and before creating the SRS. Deliberately evoking the powerful ideology and symbols of the Chetnik movement, the accused became its most prominent representative. He described, for example, the impact of an important symbol of the Chetnik movement, the Chetnik flag, and he described the impact of that flag on non-Serbs. And this is what he said, quote, "Firstly, black flags are the main hallmark of the Chetnik movement. They are very effective. You know, when those Chetnik units with black flags show up in places where there are ustashas run for their lives. Where 50 Chetniks show up, Croats think there are 10,000 of them, and they flee in panic," Exhibit P 1181. The framing of the combined SRS SCP as a military force was complete by the time the accused commanded his Šešeljevci and contributed them to Serb forces to implement the common criminal purpose. He described himself in Exhibit P 217, signed by him in 1993, that he was, quote, the only Serbian Chetnik voivoda directly involved in the current liberation movement of the Serbian people and following the tradition of the Serbian Chetniks. No. I hereby confer the title of Serbian Chetnik voivoda upon the following most prominent Chetnik commanders for their remarkable war services, great valor, and demonstrated combat skills. Close quote. And he is talking about the titles that he gave to his voivodas. The ceremony conferring the titles of voivoda to his fighters in 1993 was attended by many uniformed and armed Šešeljevci. It was also publicized showing the force of the Šešeljevci, and this is in Exhibit P255, which I'd like to show to the chamber.
On the first day of the referendum, Dr. Vojislav Šešelj, the Serbian Chetnik voivoda and the president of the Serbian Radical Party, arrived today in Republika Srpska. As soon as he crossed the Drina River, he went to visit our defenders on the first line of defense, afterwards Knežina, a village and monastery in the free Serbian Romania, the oath of the new Serbian Chetnik voivodas. Order number 124, as the only Chetnik voivoda directly engaged in the present day. This is a historical and very valuable material, and yet I can't hear anything. Chetnik commanders, I hereby pronounce. Romania, a mountain that doesn't speak to its enemies, rejoiced at the oath of 80 new voivodas, an oath it didn't hear for 50 years. I swear as the Serbian Chetnik voivoda, I swear to God and Saint Sava that I will fight with all my might for the freedom of the Serbian people, that I will fight with all my might for the freedom of the Serbian people, and the restoration of a unified Serbian state in the Balkans, which will encompass all Serbian lands, and the restoration of a unified Serbian state on the Balkans, which will encompass all Serbian lands. So God help me. So God help me. Good luck and bless you. May God give you a long life. One can trust them that it is going to be like this. The rank of Chetnik voivoda was bestowed on these Serbian heroes from all Serbian areas: Zdravko Bramović, Branislav Vakić, Srećko Radovanović, Slavko Crnić, Nedeljko Vidaković, Slavko Aleksić, Mitar Maksimović Manda, Miroslav Vuković Čele, Milika Davčević Čeko, Tomislav Nikolić, Milan Lančužanin Kamenin, Zoran Dražinović Čiča, Jovo Ostojić, Ljubiša Petković, Todor Lazić, Mirko Blagojević, Dragan Cvetković, and Branislav Gavrilović Brne. Brne, turn around just a little so I can capture you like that.
The accused is not charged with command responsibility. However, his authority and influence over the political, military, quasi-military SRS SGP is relevant to the nature of his contribution to the common purpose, as well as his legal responsibility as an aider and abettor and instigator. Senior members of the SRS SGP, like witnesses Petkovic, Rankic, and Glamuchanin, described the accused as having, quote, absolute power, close quote, over the combined SRS SGP. In their words, the accused was an autocrat. He was a dictator. And that, for example, can be found in Exhibit C13, pages 26 to 27. The accused reveled in his authoritarian roles throughout the conflict, describing himself with military-style titles like commander, the supreme commander, and as, quote, the commander of the operative detachments of the SGP in the homeland, end quote. This is set out in Exhibits P59, P154, and P1058. And he was proud of this authority, which he reinforced publicly, saying, quote, I organize interventions by our guerrilla organization, and I define aims of attack and points that have to be won, close quote. After the shelling of Vukovar, for example, while non-Serbs were fleeing and before the brutal crimes of Ovčara and Velepromet, the accused held rallies where he was escorted by armed bodyguards, uniformed armed bodyguards. The effect was clear, as VS2 told the chamber at transcript page 6557, quote, he was a voivode. We would not have refused his order, close quote. The accused position as the undisputed Chetnik leader and voivode within the SRS SGP and his perceived legitimacy as a politician all facilitated his indoctrination of the Serb forces, especially to embed fear and hatred, justifying ethnic separation and forcible removal of non-Serbs. That evidence is beyond a reasonable doubt. Also during the indictment period, as described in Exhibit P 1182, the accused was a media star. That status amplified his already significant audience for his campaign of hatred against non-Serbs. It also amplified and intensified the quality of his contribution to and encouragement of the charged crimes. In addition to the extensive coverage he received in the media, the accused created his own media machinery to disseminate his propaganda, such as press conferences and his two SRS publications, Velika Serbia and Zabatna Serbia. He also appealed to the public through personal appearances and rallies. His popularity and influence won him yet another title, that of 1991's Man of the Year, given to him by the media in Serbia, as shown in Exhibit P 1190. The accused media coverage facilitated his war on non-Serbs, whereby he used his words as weapons in his persecution campaign. As the accused acknowledged in Exhibit P 1337, quote, propaganda is based on the fact that the vast majority of people are naturally ready to believe indiscriminately in everything they read, hear, or see on television, close quote. Several ground-level perpetrators committed crimes soon after listening to the accused hate propaganda, like in Vukovar and Herkovci. Some cited his ideas as driving them to, quote, clean up, end quote, non-Serbs, as in Exhibit P57. He inspired thousands to join the ranks of Šešelj. This shows that his hate propaganda had a demonstrable impact on the persecution campaign as it unfolded on the ground. The confluence of the accused's political influence, his quasi-military authority, media coverage, and campaign of hatred against non-Serbs was a lethal and criminal mix that furthered the common purpose. Witness Oberschall defined propaganda as, quote, a technique of persuasion that is based on emotional appeals, end quote. He explained that threats and other propaganda tools operate to create a demand for action, and this is at transcript page 2054. He also described repetition as being a key component to successful propaganda. Repeated and repeated and repeated, hateful propaganda imbues its audience with hate, even turning some to violence to remove a perceived threat. That threat, according to this accused, was non-Serbs. Before and during the indictment period, the accused was relentless in his promotion of a Greater Serbia, relentless in his labeling of Croats as Ustashi, relentless in his degrading language about Bosniaks, relentless in his evocation of genocidal threats to Serbs, and relentless in his inciting calls for revenge. Together, all a significant contribution to the common purpose. Together, all building a coercive environment and conditioning the minds of both non-Serbs and sympathizers. These instigating propaganda contributions, which I will now highlight, came into lethal fruition with the commencement of the charged crimes. The accused espoused Chetnik-based ideology to recruit Serb fighters and to create fear in non-Serbs. He again and again advocated force to gain and retain what he considered Serb lands outside of Serbia. He again and again proclaimed that Serbs, Croats, and Muslims simply could not live together, as in Exhibits P 1298 and 1211. He again and again denigrated non-Serbs to promote contempt and hatred for them, and he warned that non-Serbs posed a physical, demographic, cultural, and even economic threat to Serbs, like in Exhibits P 1295 and 1280. Again and again and again, this accused and his political and quasi-military machinery, the SRS-SCP, evoked past victimization and genocide against Serbs in order to advocate and justify criminal revenge and violence against non-Serbs. In other words, to justify the crimes necessary to the common criminal purpose. In Exhibit P35, for example, he threatened, quote, all those with an unclear conscience should fear us Serbs. They have reason to fear us. We Serbs have forgotten and forgiven too much in history. We have told the Croats, should they ever again resort to genocidal activities against the Serbian people, not only shall we take revenge for every victim, but we shall also settle scores for the victims from World War I and World War II, end quote. Public declarations of this kind were designed to encourage Serbs to perpetrate crimes against non-Serbs and to absolve them of responsibility for committing such crimes. The accused himself has admitted in Exhibit P1215 that, quote, words can be a very dangerous weapon. Sometimes they pound like an howitzer, end quote. As he now faces criminal charges, he wants you to believe that words, his words, had no power at all. The evidence shows that to be false. He knew his hate propaganda pounded like an howitzer. The evidence has proven him to be right. He pounded non-Serbs in Croatia with his hateful words. He pounded non-Serbs in BiH, and he pounded non-Serbs in Hrvatski. When he called for Greater Serbia, he was promoting and justifying the subjugation, expulsion, and maltreatment of non-Serbs. As inter-ethnic tensions increased and erupted, his words continued to pound non-Serbs. I will now highlight some of the accused pounding hate propaganda directed at Croats in Croatia. According to the accused himself, he was invited to Plitvice in April of 1991, shortly before the indictment period, and he was invited by Milan Babic, member of the Serb leadership of the new SAO Krajina. In Plitvice around this time, there already had been a recent killing of 2 policemen, a Croat and a Serb. The accused chose that occasion to deliver an inflammatory speech to a large Serb audience. He warned them that they would be sold and promised them, quote, we will avenge Serb blood, end quote. The trial chamber can observe in Exhibit P339 the impact of the accused speech on the crowd. Now I'll ask that that be played at this time.
In such an atmosphere, Vojvoda Šešelj announced already at the beginning of the meeting, started his speech. Serbian people live here. This is Serbian land, and it will remain Serbian forever. That's right, that's right. After labeling the decision on the establishing of the Serbian Autonomous District of Krajina, historic Šešelj said, Serbian brothers and Serbian sisters, you find yourselves in the front lines defending the Serbian cause. Again, I can't hear anything. These are the words of a genius that I'm still proud of even today, but I can't hear a thing.
For his controls.
Ja sam ton povećao na maksimum.
I have increased the volume, but I could not hear anything. You may have noticed that when I addressed you, Your Honours, my volume was at the maximum.
Possible to turn up the volume for us to hear?
Your Honours, will ask that the technicians come in at this time, and what I'll do is I will read the intros and we can play the videos back to back once we have the audio at a proper level. In that speech, in Exhibit 339, the accused told his audience, "We're sending a message to the new Ustasha head of state and Ustasha regime in Croatia. Serbian heads have rolled. A Serbian head has rolled in Serbian Western Srem and Slavonia. We will avenge Serbian blood." Soon after that speech, the accused gave another one shortly thereafter, on the 21st of April, 1991, in Jagodnjak, Croatia, in Baranja, where Serbs had faced brutal crimes in World War II. There, the accused evoked the genocide of Serbs and declared that Croats could only have land west of the KOKV line. In Exhibit P70, when it's played, the chamber will hear and see that the applause was most enthusiastic when the accused repeated his infamous refrain about the Karlobag Oyulin Karlovac Virovitica line.
Croats, as far as you are concerned, you can leave Yugoslavia if you want to. Whenever they want to, they can leave. But we are openly letting them know that they will not take away a square foot of Serb territory. Not one piece of land where there are Serbian villages, destroyed churches, Serbian mass graves, Serbian camps, the Serbian Jasenovac. If we allowed that, we would be unworthy of our glorious ancestors, and we would have to be ashamed before our descendants. The Croats can create their new state, but only west of the Karlobag, Ogulin, Karlovac, Virovitica line. Everything east of that line is Serbian.
And that was Exhibit 70, and at this time we will try again to play Exhibit P339.
In such an atmosphere, Voivode Šešelj announced already at the beginning of the meeting, started his speech. Crowds shouting, "Vojo, Vojo, Serbia, Serbia." This is Serbian land. Here Serbian people live, and it will remain Serbian forever. Audience, that's right, that's right. Journalist, after labeling the decision on the establishment of the Serbian Autonomous District of Krajina historic, Šešelj said, "Serbian brothers and Serbian sisters, you find yourselves in the front lines defending the Serb cause, Serbian state borders. You are in the most difficult position and you are the pride of the whole of Serbdom. Journalist, he's promised them that they would not be left to themselves and that all the Serbs in Croatia have only one party, the Serbian Democratic Party. Šešelj, you have a wise and brave leadership here, headed by the heroic Dr. Milan Babić. Journalist, those who divide the Serbian people he labeled as traitors. Šešelj, only Ante Marković's mercenaries and those of foreign intelligence services believe today that there are more important problems than your defense, your protection. They are offering you up to Tudjman. They would sell you. You will not be sold or betrayed. Journalist, instead of calming them down, Šešelj sent a message to the gathered people at the end. Šešelj, we are sending a message to the new Ustasha head of state and the Ustasha regime in Croatia. Serbian heads have rolled, struck down by the Ustasha hand in the Serbian Krajina. A Serbian head has rolled, and we will avenge it.
In the same month that he gave those speeches, he deployed Šešeljevci to Borovo Selo. After his volunteer deployment, after his speeches there, Šešeljevci participated in ambushing and killing Croat police in Borovo Selo on the 2nd of May, 1991. The accused was unrelenting. At an Orthodox celebration attended by Karadzic 4 days later, on the 6th of May, 1991, the accused warned the Serb crowd about a new genocide against the Serb people, about avenging those crimes, and about Chetniks fighting throughout Croatia. And this is captured in Exhibit P353, which I'll ask be played now.
Our Western enemies are attempting to carry out a new genocide against the Serbian people. Brothers and sisters, Serbs, it is our duty to stop it, and we are sending this message to our enemies. Not only shall we avenge the present victims, but we shall avenge the previous ones too, when they dared to put the Ustasha knife under the Serbian throat again. Bosnia and the brave Serbian Herzegovina people, it is particularly you who must not allow to be divided. You have one political party, the Serbian Democratic Party. You have your leadership, which has proven its qualities in action on the front lines and which has upheld the honor of Serbdom. They showed the Ustasha, who are superior in manpower, that the Serbian heroism is still alive. The Serbian Chetnik units will be active in all other areas of Western Serbia, in Serbian Krajina, in Serbian Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Srem. We shall not give up a single inch of Serbian territory. Let the Slovenes leave Yugoslavia. They have never been our brothers or friends. Let the Croats go too. Let Croatia secede. But we are not giving them an inch of the territory to the east of the Karlobag-Ogulin-Karlovac-Virovitica line.
Continuing, on May 15, 1991, the accused again warned Serbs of a new genocide threatening them, and this is shown in Exhibit P178, which I'd asked to be played at this time.
Šešelj speaking. The Croatian Ustashas are defeated. Vukašin Šoškoćanin led the resistance in Borovo Sela. And Ustashas didn't crowds shouting, revenge, revenge, revenge. Šešelj, it is too much. We have to get back because the new genocide is threatening us. We have to get back to the old Ustasha politics of Stjepan Mesić. Crowds shouting, "We will kill Mesić, we will kill Mesić." Šešelj, Ante Marković. Crowds shouting, "Ante Ustasha, Ante Ustasha." Tite Ustasha, Tite Ustasha. Šešelj, it is too much. Serbs from Serbia and Krajina will not remain without help or without protection. Crowds shouting, "Right, right." Šešelj, hundreds of thousands at any moment. Šešelj, words, and then to leave, and Serbia to remain definitely damaged, maimed. Serbs will never accept any kind of confederation. We, people in Yugoslavia, which is above the interest of the Serbian people.
In that crowd, as the trial chamber was able to observe, were men dressed up in military garb and in Chetnik insignia. And after inciting that crowd, his calls for revenge intensified yet. And as his calls for revenge intensified, so did his deployment of Šešeljevci to Croatia. The accused described in Exhibit P30 how, quote, "In 1991, we began organizing volunteers on a larger scale and sending them to already established front lines, particularly in eastern Slavonia," end quote. The accused volunteers, his Šešeljevci, knew what they were fighting for revenge against non-Serbs to create a greater Serbia. As Vukovar was shelled and right up to the crimes perpetrated there, this increase in volunteer deployment was accompanied by the accused's continued persecution propaganda against non-Serbs. On the 27th of August 1991, in Exhibit P1279, the accused refers to Ustasha saying, quote, "We express the decisiveness not to stop the struggle until we liberate all the Serbian lands and until we are completely separated from those who never were our brothers and friends," end quote. And he continued this refrain into September of 1991. For example, the accused promised that, quote, "The time has come to avenge all the Serb victims and unite all the Serb lands." Exhibit P355. In the same month, he described a volunteer dying at, quote, "the perfidious hands of the Ustashas," end quote. He added, quote, "You will not go unavenged. The foe will feel the punishment of the Serbian people. The time has come to settle old accounts. The time has come to avenge all Serbian sacrifices and to unify all the Serbian lands," end quote. P40. In an issue of Velika Serbia, the head of the SRS crisis staff, witness Petkovic, said, quote, "A blood-sucking virus called genocide, which is again breeding in the Ustasha blood, is threatening the Serbian people with new mass graves, pits, slaughterhouses, jails. We are facing a new wave of extermination which even Dr. Mengele would envy. Exhibit P1280. And still, in September of 1991, all shortly before the crimes committed in Vukovar, the accused lauded that, quote, Chetnik weapons have retained their old glory in battles against the Croatian Ustašas so far. They have reason to fear the Chetniks. Exhibit P1182. At the end of September 1991, now only weeks before the crimes committed in Vukovar, the accused used the freedom of a private session of the National Assembly to set out more clearly his ethnic strategy and to link Serb territorial claims to World War II crimes. Quote, in Croatia, only a military solution suits us Serbs. Why? Because the world will never recognize 1 million of Jasenovac's victims. Because the world will recognize, after all, if we force them by military force to recognize as Serbian only those territories where there is a Serbian majority. But we also want those territories where Serbs make up between 30 and 50%, as well as those where today there are no Serbs at all, thanks to the Second World War genocide, because of some strategic reasons. We cannot defend the borders if they're only ethnic borders, if we are not led also by some strategic reasons in determining them. Because the greatest danger for us that we haven't even discussed yet is that the world might force us to keep on living with the Croatians and Slovenians in the same country. P1257 at pages 54 to 55. In Vukovar, both the accused and his Šešelj were notorious. The deployment of Šešelj, after all of these speeches that the accused made, was so substantial and so linked to the accused that their units were referred to as Šešeljevci, even in official JNA communications, as seen in Exhibit P41. In early November 1991, the accused escorted a group of Šešeljevci to the Vukovar front lines. The press coverage of his visit, memorialized in Exhibit P1283, highlighted that the accused was a national deputy in the Assembly of Serbia, who warned of the Ustaša hordes who have launched a new genocide against the Serbs in these parts. That's a quote. Addressing the volunteers and members of the TO in Vukovar, he promised, quote, we will soon send new volunteers. Vukovar must fall quickly, and with the fall of Vukovar, the Ustašas are finished in these parts, end quote. His visit had an immediate effect on the Croat forces. Quote, immediately upon Dr. Vojislav Šešelj's arrival on the Ustaša forces' radio waves, a warning was heard. Look out, the Chetnik motherfucker Šešelj has arrived, end quote. When he later visited Vukovar, the accused told members of the Serb forces, including perpetrators of the subsequent massacre at Ovčara, that, quote, no Ustaša should leave Vukovar alive, close quote. As Ms. Hockhauser will describe to you, Soon after, Šešelj and other members of the Serb forces committed atrocities throughout Vukovar, including at Velepromet and Ovčara. But I'd like to show you now how fighters on the ground were indoctrinated by the accused goal of cutting deep into Croatia so that Serbs could seize lands all the way up to the KOKV line. And at this time, I'd ask that Exhibit P57 be played.
Amongst the horror, there's the surreal incongruity of celebration. Extremist Serb militiamen and women posing triumphantly for an end-of-battle photograph before returning to a morning feast of music and laughter fueled by alcohol. The motto on their flag is freedom or death, and they vow they will fight on.
No, it's not finished. What do the Serbs need to take before the war is over?
The war will be over when we have our limits, Karlovac, Ogulin, Virovitica. All place where Serbian people live must be free, you know. We must clean up with the Croatians.
We must clean up with the Croatians. After Croats were murdered or expelled, and many villages and towns like Vukovar were razed to the ground, the accused celebrated the forced displacement of Croats, making it clear it was a successful implementation of the common purpose. For example, the accused thanked Croats who fled from the once Croat majority Osijek, described as a ghost town in Exhibit P1283. In an interview admitted as Exhibit P1186, he made clear that minority Serb areas would also be cleansed of Croats. Quote, "Listen, what does it mean Serbs are a minority? 30 or 40% of Serbs is a minority? What should we care that they're a minority? This is the territory that has to be part of the Serbian state. Among other things, the London Treaty in 1915 stipulated that. A huge number of Croats have already left Osijek, almost 100,000. How nice of them. We should thank them. They have nowhere to return to. Osijek remains a Serb town." End quote. This was ethnic cleansing. But in the accused lexicon, he sanitized ethnic cleansing, calling it a mere, quote, population exchange. The same phrase he'd later use to try to justify his crimes in Hrkopci. And in quoting that language, he also said, quote, "We will never again be able to live side by side with the Croats within the border of the same state." End quote. Throughout the conflict in Croatia, as the accused deployed volunteers, he targeted Croatians as Ustašas, labeling them and the Croatian leadership as genocidal. The accused used the term Ustaša to denigrate and debase all Croats as murderous threats to Serbs, cheapening their lives and justifying their destruction. In his brief, the accused claims that the term Ustaša is now used by Croats and that he never denigrated all Croats as Ustaša. This is wholly unsupported by the evidence before the trial chamber. The evidence beyond a reasonable doubt shows that this accused evoked the powerful symbolism of World War II Chetniks to frighten and mobilize Serbs, and that this accused also labeled all Croats as Ustashas to invoke the memories of fascist atrocities committed against Serbs during that war, and to depict all Croats as a present-day threat. VS4 testified at transcript pages 3380 and 3624 that, quote, the word Ustasha among all Serbs is the worst thing you can mention, because throughout their history, it was the Ustasha who committed the greatest crimes against Serbs. It's something that exists as the worst in the world, as an executioner, end quote. The 1990 political platform of the Serbian Chetnik movement, admitted as Exhibit P27, referred to, quote, a new Ustasha leader, end quote, who had emerged in Croatia with, quote, a new genocidal policy, end quote, against Serbs. The SRS 1991 platform repeated this language. The evidence shows that the accused intended to press the volatile issue of the responsibility of the Croatian people for the Ustasha's crimes committed in World War II. This was to link Croats to those who committed past crimes against Serbs and to justify crimes against them. During the lead-up to the war in Croatia, the accused explicitly conveyed that he viewed all Croats as Ustasha. In Exhibit P34, for example, he said, quote, how is one supposed to negotiate with the Ustashas? Did you see today that the Croatian people are entirely Ustasha? There are very few exceptions, end quote. In a televised interview, admitted as Exhibit P31, he made it very clear, he made it very simple, and he said, quote, Croats must be punished, end quote. In a radio interview in January 1992, admitted as Exhibit 1189, the accused bragged that his volunteers helped to destroy, quote, pure Croatian villages, end quote, as they were all considered, quote, strong Ustasha fortifications, end quote. He warned his listeners that, quote, Croats exist as a people on the basis of an anti-Serb hatred, end quote. According to him, they and Slovenes were ready to become part of the Fourth German Reich. Without distinguishing civilians from combatants, Ustashas from Croats, he reported to the listening audience that, quote, Croats were dying in masses, end quote. And several months later, he physically committed persecution against the Croats of Hrtkovci, changing that village from a Croat majority village into a Serb majority one. His intent throughout, from the crimes in Croatia to the crimes in Hrtkovci, was to denigrate Croats and incite crimes against them, including forcing them to leave and destroying them. As Mr. Markuson described, by early 1992, the JCE members were shifting their focus from Croatia to Bosnia and Herzegovina. The accused began his persecution campaign there well before open conflict started. His pounding, unrelenting, hateful, and divisive language helped to prepare the ground for the discriminatory violence against non-Serbs. With increasing frequency, this accused threatened bloodshed in BIH. He invoked blood over and over and over again to foreshadow the consequences of BIH's Declaration of Independence. As early as November 1991, around the time that Karadzic made his Highway to Hell speech, the accused, in Exhibit P1186, in a radio interview, announced, quote, "There would be rivers of blood," end quote, if BIH declared independence. So, if Bosnian Muslims refused to remain part of a truncated Yugoslavia, the accused threatened, quote, "Bosnia will be part of the Serbian state," end quote. On the 16th of January 1992, in Exhibit P1190, the accused, in another radio interview, told his audience that Bosnia and Herzegovina had nowhere to go, so Muslims were now clutching at straws, according to him. And even if Muslims stayed in a state with the Serbs and were given autonomy, the accused, by his calculations, said that they were entitled to just 18% of BIH, although they were the largest ethnic group. And in that radio interview, he glorified Serbs as born soldiers, taught military skills in the cradle, who should be feared by non-Serbs. On the 20th of February 1992, the accused used a televised SRS press conference, admitted as P1192 and P395, to repeat his ultimatum to Bosnian Muslims that should BIH seek independence, there would be flooded rivers of blood there. The accused hosted this press conference with Mirko Blagojevic, president of the regional boards of both the SRS and SCP for northeastern Bosnia and Herzegovina, and whom the accused later appointed voivoda. Less than 2 months later, Blagojevic participated in the takeover and crimes in Bijeljina. As war drew closer, the accused persecution propaganda in BIH intensified. In publicized speeches, rallies, and interviews throughout March 1992, the accused pounded his audience. He pounded Serbs, he pounded Bosnian Muslims, and he pounded them with 3 themes. First, the accused insisted that Serbs had the right to dominate most or all of the territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as described, for example, in P1293, where he said this in front of a rally of approximately 6,000 to 7,000 people held on March 1st. Second, he claimed that Serbs in BIH were under threat because if BIH became independent, Serbs would have to live under an Islamic Jamahiriya, governed by, quote, Islamic fundamentalists, end quote, and, quote, Turks, end quote, as described in exhibits P1193, 1293, and 1295. Third, the accused made it clear that Serb control over BIH would require a civil war and massive bloodshed. For example, Exhibit P1324 describes a press conference held on March 5th, In that press conference, the accused threatened and intimidated Bosnian Muslims and directed Serb forces about what should happen when BiH declared independence. He promised, quote, bloodshed, end quote. He promised a, quote, bloody civil war, end quote. And he promised, quote, rivers of blood, end quote, flowing in BiH. To contribute to that bloody war, he publicly directed the SRS and SCP throughout rump Yugoslavia to, quote, to put our volunteers on the highest alert so that they are ready at any moment to intervene in areas in BiH. And that can be found at page 1 of that exhibit. And similarly, Exhibit P1293 from March 6th, the same day that BiH declared independence, the accused used the same hateful language. And he pounded these oratorical trigger points in his audience again and again and again. If I understood the trial chamber correctly, we are going until 7. Is that correct? Thank you. On the 26th of March, mere days before Serb takeovers in BiH commenced, the accused, in Exhibit P685, used inflammatory language to condition Serbs to discriminatory violence against non-Serbs and to make non-Serbs fearful. Quote, the independence of BiH can be achieved only at graveyards through blood running knee-deep in the territory which the Serbian people have vital interests. He announced he and the SRS did not recognize the presidency of BiH, and he welcomed the creation of separate Serb authorities, a critical preparation for implementing the common criminal purpose. And he made it clear, quote, Serbs will never allow the Islamic Jamahiriya to extend to their people, end quote. The accused propaganda continued unabated. He addressed the media and/or the National Assembly almost every day in early April 1992, and he demonized non-Serbs, as seen among other exhibits, those listed in footnotes 45, 1803, 1804, and 1807 of the prosecution's closing brief. On April 1st, 1992, Serb takeovers in BiH began. A little over a week later, on 9 April 1992, the accused held a press conference, Exhibit 685, with Mirko Blagojevic. Vojvoda Blagojevic was already being questioned by the press about the killing of civilians in Bijeljina. Standing next to Blagojevic, the accused praised him as commander of the Šešeljevci, who had initiated the takeover in Bijeljina. He called upon Serbs to defend Republika Srpska from, quote, Ustaša and pan-Islamist hordes, end quote. The accused repeated his refrain about protecting Serbian territories against the threat of Islamic fundamentalism. In Exhibit P396, he repeated that the Serbian people in BiH would never recognize, quote, this new Jamahiriya and will never give up its territories, end quote. He also repeated and reinforced his inciting calls to Serbs to support the criminal campaign in BiH. For example, as a brutal takeover of Zvornik was executed by Serb forces, the accused reminded them in Exhibit P 1195, quote, "It has been up to us for a long time now to help," end quote, help Serb forces in Zvornik with men and other support. The accused did not halt his propaganda or calls for violence as a criminal campaign in BiH escalated. Instead, he used his influence and authority to promote unification of all Serb lands and to create a climate of ethnic fear and hatred. He justified or ignored the crimes that had already been committed, thereby preparing the ground for further criminality. For instance, on the 28th of May, 1992, non-Serbs were being tortured and murdered at the Ekonomia farm and Ciglana factory in Zvornik. The accused stood before a large rally crowd and promoted cleansing the BiH side of the Drina River. Accompanied by Nikola Poplashin, president of the SRS BiH, and Rade Leskovac, president of the SRS Krajina, the accused told the applauding crowd that, quote, "The only thing that remained to be done in Bosnia and Herzegovina is to clean up the left bank of the Drina, secure a corridor between the Bosnian Krajina and Semberia, and liberate the Serbian part of Sarajevo, while the rest is already in our hands." Exhibit P 1200. On the 28th of May 1992, the 4th of June 1992, and the 11th of June 1992, the accused
I have an objection. I don't want to interject and interrupt Ms. Bisset. Something has been omitted from the transcript. The date of the rally where I was seen with Poplashin and Leskovac. She did mention the date. I did not hear it properly, but now I'm looking at the transcript and I can't see the date. And I believe that this should be corrected. It's important.
Indicate what the date of that meeting was with Nikola Poplashin.
It is published in Exhibit P 1200, and it's dated the 28th of May 1992.
Your Honors, this is impossible. There is a 2 or even 3 year difference. It's impossible, and I suppose that's why the date was omitted from the transcript.
Mrs. Bisset, could you please verify the date?
That for your Honors. After the accused gave those press conferences on May 28th, 4th of June, and 11 June 1992, where he continued to pound Muslims, 2 days later, after the 28th of May 1992 press conference, between the 30th and 31st of May 1992, a group of Šešeljevci murdered 88 non-Serbs at Drnjača Dom Kulture in Zvornik. On June 4, the accused lamented that Serbs had already suffered under Turkish rule for 500 years and repeated his territorial goal of the KOKV line. On the following day, Serb forces, including a group led by Šešelj's voivoda, Vidović, murdered 22 non-Serb men and women in Leševo Iliash. June 11, 1992, was just a few days after 740 non-Serbs had been massacred in Karakai and Diro slaughterhouse. while non-Serbs were being tortured and murdered in Čelepek Dom Kulture in Zvornik, the accused again made the inflammatory claim that Bosnian Muslims were trying to return Serbs to 500 years of, quote, Turkish slavery, end quote. The accused predictions of rivers of blood flowing in BiH had foreshadowed the brutal crimes committed there. Serb forces carried out his call to make parts of BiH into a slice of Greater Serbia. Of course, words were not all that the accused deployed. He also pounded Croatia and pounded BiH with other weapons, the volunteers he mobilized throughout the crime bases. I see that we have, I think, reached the end of the session. So before continuing the next section, I wondered if the trial chamber would be happy to stop here.
Ja predlažem da nam sad...
Since Ms. Bissay has finished, maybe she could tell us the date of the rally, which I attended to together with Poplušin and Leskovac. I suppose that she has had the time to find that.
Mrs. Bissay, if you haven't found the date, you can tell us the date tomorrow morning, but in any case, I will also verify in Exhibit P 1200 in order to check what you said. We shall be here again tomorrow at 9 a.m. and I wish you all a good night. Until then.
All rise, we will wait.